Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Deku Becomes a Pokemon Trainer. In this story, it is simply what you might expect. The story of My Hero Academia, but in world filled with not only quirks, but also Pokemon. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel, after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. 10 years ago, in a small apartment building in Musatafu City, the sounds of excitement and child laughter could be heard. Izuku Midoriya ran around the house, a Silver Age All Might figurine in his hand, his arms out wide, pretending he had a flight-based quirk and was soaring through the air. He made vroom-like sounds, his messy dark green hair blowing against the fast movement and the fans that set up around the living room. He yelled out, making his voice deeper like All Might, "Stop there, evil Dar. Your villainy will not stand. I am a hero, and I will protect the lives of people in Pokemon from your evil ways." His villain he was chasing was his Eevee, smaller and more young, jumping out and trying to run away from his companion. Eevee leaped and ran around, on, and over the furniture, all the while calling out its name, with glee and laughter in his voice. Eevee wore a dark purple cape, strung around his neck and flapped as he ran. His eyes were masked by a red, sinister design mask. "Eevee! Eevee!" Eevee called out, his voice trying to mimic a humorous, villainous laugh. Izuku thought of a plan to catch the evil Dar, and stopped in his tracks. He then sprinted the opposite direction, launched down onto the floor and performed a roll, clumsily, and hid behind the sofa, his appearance hidden from the gleeful, unaware Pokemon. Izuku peered over the sofa to see Eevee heading his way from the left. The young, 4-year-old boy smiled brightly and heroic. He crouched, timed Eevee's heading in speed, and launched himself. As Eevee appeared and looked to his left, the evolution Pokemon was caught off guard and tackled by the small boy. Izuku grabbed onto Eevee, his small furry body in his embrace, and rolled onto the floor. They stopped with Eevee in Izuku's hands, held high in front of him. Izuku laughed heroically, "Haha. I caught you, evil Dar. Your villainous ways end here. Because I am here." Eevee's response was licking his face in endearment. Izuku giggled and laughed. "Eevee." Izuku shouted gleefully and playfully annoyed. "You can't do that, you silly furball. Villains don't lick the heroes when they are caught. That's gross and weird." Eevee shook off his mask, and Izuku removed his cape. Izuku beamed, face full of innocence and happiness, and said to his partner Eevee, "The time is almost here. Our visit to the doctor. The day we find out what my quirk is going to be. Bev Eevee." Eevee shouted out in glee. Izuku got up from the ground, stood, and posed dramatically, a clenched fist at his side, and his All Might figure raised high. Eevee mimicked Izuku as best he could, sitting on the ground with a paw raised into the air. The two wore bright smiles on their faces. Izuku said, "When I get my quirk, I will train hard and make it as strong as possible. We will train together, you will learn powerful moves, and I will do the same. We will go to UA High, the best hero school in the world, the same school All Might went to, and we will become heroes too. Eevee." The Pokemon shouted with conviction. Suddenly, Izuku heard his mother, Izuku Midoriya, calling out to him. Izuku and Eevee turned to his mother peering out from the corner. She said, "It's computer time. 1 hour of using the computer, remember?" Izuku Midoriya definitely took after his mother. Her long hair, some of it wrapped in a bun while the rest flowed to her shoulders, took the same color as Izuku's. Her eyes held an emerald color and had pale white skin. She was a beautiful mother, with a thin and herbless figure. She wore a bright pink sweater over a white dress shirt, a pair of white sandals on her feet, a short blue skirt, and wore a cream-colored apron over the rest. Izuku brightened up and said, "Yeah. Come on Eevee, it's video time." Izuku and Eevee ran towards the computer room, his mother following. Izuku practically launched himself into the chair and as he did pleaded out to his mom, "Come on mom. Play the video. Faster. Faster." Mrs. Midoriya chuckled and said, alright, calm down, my little hero." She activated the computer and searched up the said video. Inko said, "Geez, I think you added 10,000 views to this video yourself, Izuku. I don't know why you like this video so much, I think it's scary." Izuku didn't look affected by his mother's soft, kind words, holding his All Might figure in his hands tightly, and rocking head up and down, with a look of innocent and wild excitement in his eyes. Eevee, likewise, sat next to Deku by the arms of the chair, rocking his own head sideways. As the video started up, Izuku and Eevee leaned in, his face gaining a tiny red blush of excitement, and practically screamed internally with energy. The video Izuku was seeing, his most favorite one, was an old one. Disaster footage from a long time ago. The video played out as the shot showed a smoking, flaming surrounding. Rubble and debris everywhere, roaring fires erupted all around, dark plumes of smoke rose into the air, clouding the night sky, and the terrified screams of the people there filled the night with the sounds of falling rubble and roaring fires. The video panned out towards a group of civilians and their Pokemon, victims of the disaster. Izuku could count about over 100. They ranged from men, women, and even children, their clothes covered in ash and soot, some even looked injured with bruises, cuts, and blood. The video panned to a guy among the crowd next to the man filming the event. He had simple white shirt, covered in dirt and rubble, his dark hair messy, and some tiny splatters of blood on his shoulder. He looked at the camera and said with panic in his voice and fear on his face. "Who is he?" The man spoke. "The guy has already saved over 100 people, at least, and it hasn't even been 10 minutes. This is crazy. I can't believe it." The event was truly terrible and scary. But the reason why Izuku loved this video was because it was the debut of the greatest hero the world had ever seen. The video switched towards a ruined tour bus. A large figure started to appear over the bus. Izuku, even after seeing it so many times, heaved in breaths with excitement, his open smile growing wider, his shining eyes growing brighter. The figure climbed up the bus slowly, laughing triumphantly. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. The figure stood tall with a physique to put a matchum to shame. 2 tufts of yellow hair sprung up like the ears of a Cinderus. His costume blue, white and red, with yellow gloves, belt, and boots with yellow feather designs sticking out. The red and white formed a V on his chest, similar to the shining smile on his chiseled face. On his back, and in his arms held about a dozen or more injured civilians. A second later, a flash of red and white appeared as Cinderus, one of the hero's most popular and powerful Pokemon, stood side by side with his hero partner. Several small Pokemon lifted onto his right shoulder and carrying more on his left. "Look, he's got more," the man shouted out. Izuku's eyes shined and breathed cutely and full of energy and hope. The whole world around him seemed to fade to white as he watched the video and the godly man that stood there. As the figure placed out a foot above the bus, All Might shouted out to the people, "Fear not, citizens. Hope has arrived." Izuku's gleaming eyes shone upon the hero, his eyes covered in shadows and a line of blood teared down the man's head, but he smiled brightly all the same. "Because I am here." Izuku let out a shout of energy, his hair comically blowing in absent wind. He smiled whiter than ever before, Eevee by his side looking upon All Might and Cinderus, in the same light of passion and energy as Izuku. Izuku raised his All Might figurine into the air triumphantly and looked upon it with a smile. "He's the coolest in the universe," Izuku shouted. "And once I get my quirk I'll be a hero just like him." Ahahaha. Izuku laughed like All Might, Eevee joining him in. Inko looked upon her little boy with a smile, but it was soon replaced with a look of nervous uncertainty. Later, "Sorry kid, it's not going to happen." Izuku's bright world turned to ash right then and there. He gaped in shock, his mouth still with a smile, yet his eyes only held disbelief and despair. His All Might figurine dropped onto the floor. Eevee looked upon Izuku with worry in his eyes. Inko, the comforting hand on Izuku's side, said worryingly, "Oh dear, so do you think there is something wrong then?" She looked to Midoriya in a worried glance. "Most of the other kindergartners have already begun to show signs of their quirks already, so I figured something was off when he didn't show anything." The man in front of them, leaning back lazily in his chair, was an old man, a doctor. Dr. Shiga. Izuku thought when he saw and read it on the doctor's coat pin. The old doctor was bald, his head looking like an egg to little Izuku, and had a bushy light brown mustache below his large nose that seemingly covered his mouth. He wore a white doctor's lab coat, a dark gray dress shirt underneath, a black tie, dark khakis pants, a watch in his left wrist, and black dress shoes. He also had a stethoscope hanging from his neck. The most odd feature about the old man were his large round steampunk-like glasses, the rims golden and bumpy, and the glass emerald green in color. The doctor spoke again. "My records showed that you are a 4th-generation quirk user. What powers do you and the boy's father have?" Inko brought her up her face, cupping it. She timidly said, "Nothing too special. I can float small objects towards me, and my husband breathes fire." She demonstrated a quirk by using her free left hand, and made an "come hither" gesture towards the ground. The All Might figurine floated slowly towards Mrs. Midoriya till she snatched it from midair. "They're useful enough, I suppose." The old doctor wrinkled his nose, and Izuku almost saw the old man sneer, but not in disgust, but rather in amusement. Izuku should have already manifested one of these quirks or a combination of both, but after viewing his X-rays, I don't think he is going to. The old man turned and gestured towards the whiteboard to his side, above his computer desk. There was an X-ray chart of a tiny human foot. He continued, "You see, when these superpowers first started appearing, there were a number of research studies conducted. Some involving studying people's DNA for possible blending of human and Pokemon DNA and other factors. Doctors soon discovered a link between the bones in a person's foot and the likelihood of developing a quirk. People with quirks have only one joint in their pinky toes. Their bodies have, in a sense, evolved into a more stream-like version of the human form." The doctor tapped Izuku's X-rayed foot and said, "As you can see here, Izuku only has 2 joints in his pinky, like roughly 20% of the population these days. Based on the research we have, it's safe to say that your son isn't going to develop a quirk." As the doctor talked, Inko looked on her son with worry and sadness. Eevee shifted his glances from worry and concern for Izuku and hatred and fury towards the doctor. Izuku, meanwhile, still held his smile, but his wide, shadowed eyes shone with tears and utter despair. He kept the look the whole way home. Later that night, rain poured outside, and the streetlights glowed yellow. Izuku sat on the chair, rewatching the disaster footage. Inko and Evie looked upon Izuku, his body hidden by the chair, the room darkened with the only light coming from the computer. Their eyes were the same, concerned and sad. Izuku had said nothing on the way home, he said nothing as he entered the house, he said nothing as he gestured his mom to the computer to play the video. He hasn't said anything yet. As All Might said his famous words, Izuku finally spoke, untold sadness leaking out. "See that, Mom? Evie." He pointed to All Might's smiling face. There's always a smile on his face. No matter how bad things get, even when things seem impossible, he never gives up. He turned the chair to face the two. Evie and Inko would forever be scarred and haunted by the smiling tear and despair-filled eyes. Inko's tears started to fall, whimpering. He looked to her with pleading, tearful, sorrowful eyes. His finger pointed shakily at All Might, and smiled on both their faces. He asked, his voice broken and pleading, "Do you think I can be a hero too?" The world seemed to freeze. Inko took 2 shaking steps before rushing towards Izuku and wrapping him in a tight embrace, her eyes closed, crying, her cheeks rubbing his own. "I'm sorry, Izuku," she said, whimpering. "I wish things were different." The tears fell from Izuku's eyes, flowing past his diamond freckles. His smiling face looking broken, his smile on the verge of collapsing. "Mom, that's not what I needed you to say. Couldn't you see? My world was crumbling. There was only one thing I needed to hear." Izuku looked down towards Evie. The Pokemon looked at him with tears in his eyes, his mouth whimpering, but held its smile. "Evie?" Evie said, his head nodding up. Izuku couldn't understand what Evie said, but somehow, he knew what he meant. A tiny flicker lit up his eyes, and hope brimmed once again in his heart. As always, his faithful companion believed in him, no matter what. There was just one person left that Izuku needed to hear him to say. Present day. On the rooftop of a fandom building, in Yusatafu City, All Might stood frozen, his gaze turned back to the source of his frozen state. Not by some quirk, by rather the question the boy asked. Is it possible to become a hero, even if I don't have a quirk? Can I ever hope to be someone like you? Can I be a hero, too? There rang through All Might's head on repeat, all thoughts he had before suddenly vanished. Without a quirk, All Might said. He looked at the boy, young and thin, a middle school uniform, so he shouldn't be older than 14 or 15, and had a mop of messy dark emerald hair. He stood there timid, eyes closed and blushing in embarrassment, but despite his timid look, his question was voiced with an air of conviction that forced him to listen. He looked so similar. Acted so similar. So much like I. The flare of pain knocked All Might out of his thoughts. Oh no. All Might thought in panic as he crouched and held his body in pain. Smoke hissed and leaked out of All Might's body, covering him. My limb is done. No. Not now, damn it. Not here. Unbeknownst to the boy, Izuku opened his eyes to ground below him. He spoke. People think I don't have a chance. That since I don't have a quirk that I'm useless, a weakling. That even though I don't want to evolve Eevee because he doesn't want to, that I'm an idiot. My classmates make fun of me, some even Izuku cut himself from that final statement. For all his faults, Izuku still didn't want to rat out Katsuki Bakugo. He didn't want to ruin his life if All Might believe him. He wouldn't be like him. He continued, but I want to prove them wrong. I want to show them that you don't need a quirk to be a heroic, to be a hero. Ever since I was little, I always thought that being a hero is that greatest thing a person can do. Eevee and Pikachu looked at their companion and smiled proudly. They turned towards All Might, their smiling faces switching to one of pure shock. Izuku still unaware. To save others despite all the dangers, despite the fear, and save them with a smile on my face. To bring them peace, for people to look at me as a shining hero that everyone in the world looks up to. Izuku looked up towards All Might and said, just like you. He froze in shock as well. A few seconds of silence filled the air, before Izuku screamed in abject shock and horror. Ah. Where the godly physique of All Might stood, was the complete opposite. The man before him wore the same clothes, but wasn't like the All Might that stood there a second ago. His gelled back hair became a messy bushel of blonde hair, his 2 outward tufts of hair fell down the sides of his face. His chiseled face became hollow, his shadowed eyes sunk to reveal his sky blue eyes, and his shining, wide smile was replaced with a toothy frown. His once tall, imposing, godly figure shrunk, his back arched downward, his muscles gone and left, but skin and bones in its place. The man that was once All Might was like a human skeleton, with his clothes now baggy and few inches too big for the skinny man. What just happened? Izuku questioned loudly. Where did All Might go? Izuku whirled his head wildly to the sides, trying to see if he could spot the manly symbol of peace flying away. He turned to the skinny man and asked, who are you? What did you do with All Might? The accused skinny man sighed in frustrated acceptance of the situation. He looked to the kid and said, I didn't do anything to All Might, kid. I'm All Might. Izuku screamed again. Izuku began to mumble, something about All Might not being a skinny, thin man with a frown, how All Might was supposed to be a fearless, powerful hero with a smile on his face. That he couldn't possibly look like this. The now revealed All Might gained a comical sweat drop, feeling slightly offended with the unintentional diss of his true form. Before All Might could snap the kid out of his mumbling state, one of his Pokemon beat him to the punch. Pikachu unleashed a small thunderbolt that zapped the kid. Izuku fell to the floor, twitching and groaning, his clothes slightly smoking from the bolt of electricity. All Might was startled at the Pokemon's action, but was secretly thankful to the yellow rat Pokemon for knocking the kid out of his mumbling state. All Might said, "Hey kid, you okay?" Izuku groaned and got himself back up. He responded, "Yeah, I'm okay. Pikachu normally does that if I start to mumble and rant a bit. It's harmless, well mostly." Izuku gave the yellow rat an arrowed, annoyed glare, to which the yellow rat snickering. Izuku got up fully, and before he said another word, All Might interrupted with, "I know what you were going to say. I could hear a little bit of what you were mumbling excessively." Izuku blushed in embarrassment. All Might continued with, "I know this form of mine is shock to you, but let me explain." Izuku shrieked once again at seeing the deflated form of All Might practically drooling and couching blood. All Might coughed and wiped the blood of his chin and said, "Don't worry, I'm fine, just a side effect that happens after I debuff. As I was going to say, do you know how some guys at the pool flex and puff out to make themselves look more fit? That's basically me, on a more larger scale." Izuku stammered out, "But that impossible. You're supposed to be a giant of a man. A powerful figure that overcomes all obstacles with a fearless smile." All Might looked down and said, "Trust me, there's plenty of fear behind that smile." Izuku was shocked at that statement, his words he didn't truly believe. All Might knelt and sat by the railing of the rooftop. All Might thought for a second before he sighed and decided to come clean, hoping the kid could hold a secret. All Might said, "Look, I'm going to be straightforward with you kid and come clean with you about something important. So I'm counting on you to keep your mouth shut. Don't go blabbing about it online or telling your friends. That's saying like I have friends to blab about it too." Izuku thought bitterly, his eye twitching. All Might noticed it, along with the depressing look on the kid's face. He took note of it for later thought, but he continued. He lifted his shirt to reveal the side of his chest. By the left of his chest, by where his ribcage would be, was a disgusting purple and red wound, the scar resembling an impact crater on his side, the scarred epicenter in the middle of his side, and disgusting, cracked lines spreading around his body. Izuku gasped in horror at the sight. All Might said, "Pretty gross, right? I got this from a big fight 5 years back. My respiratory system was basically destroyed and I lost my whole stomach. All the surgeries I took to get it healed basically wore me out, and it can't be fixed. Right now, I could only do hero work for about 3 hours a day." All Might raised his other hand and gestured to himself. He said, "The rest of time, I look like this." Izuku stood there in stunned silence, so did Pikachu. Eevee, however, walked towards All Might, approaching his side where the wound was. Izuku was about to call him off, before he saw what Eevee wanted to do. All Might stood still as the evolution Pokemon came closer, curious to see what it wanted to do. Eevee raised a paw and gently touched All Might's side, All Might breathing in slightly at the sensitive touch. Eevee took a breath, closed its eyes, and started to glow luminous green. A wave of relief and warmness came onto him, he felt lighter and more relaxed. After a few more seconds, the glow and the warm feeling vanished. Eevee ceased glowing and removed his paw from All Might's side. All Might flexed his arm, feeling less from his expanding his limit. He tried seeing if he could bulk up, but seeing as a sudden feeling of pain was about to light up, All Might quickly ceased his attempts. From what All Might gathered, it seemed that whatever the Eevee did, it healed him of the pain, but not enough to give him back some of his stamina. All Might looked to the brown-furred creature and smiled, saying thank you. "Eevee," the Pokemon said chirpily. The Pokemon walked back towards Izuku before its legs wobbled and started to fall. Izuku caught him quickly. All Might asked worryingly, "What just happened?" Izuku, his face calm and smiling proudly and fondly, said, "It's okay, All Might, this happens a lot. Eevee is just a little worn out from using Heal Pulse on you. He should be fine quickly." "Heal Pulse?" All Might asked. "That's quite a move for an Eevee to have. In fact, I thought EVs couldn't learn such a move, much less their evolutions." Izuku's mouth gaped as his idol knew about EVs and his evolution's moves. He smiled and said, "Yeah, they don't. Eevee is special, one of a kind. Ever since I was a kid, Eevee somehow learned how to use Heal Pulse, despite his species not being able to learn the move. What's more interesting is that while Eevee can heal other Pokemon and not suffer any backlash, he can somehow use Heal Pulse on humans too." All Might's eyes widened in shock at the rarity of what just happened. He said, "Incredible. I thought Pokemon who knew Heal Pulse couldn't use that move on humans. Many Nurse Joys tried to train their Chanseys to push past this boundary, but still to no avail." Izuku responded with, "That's the thing. While Eevee can use Heal Pulse, it isn't a complete form of it, not in the way it can be done onto other Pokemon. The most Eevee can do is send out a relaxing and warming pulse that helps against the feeling of the pain, but it doesn't in fact heal the damage or wound. And then after Eevee tries it, he becomes tired for a bit. I've been meaning to help train Eevee to get better at this, so he can help me during hero work when I get hurt." All Might flinched at that, remembering about what they were doing before this pleasant interruption. "Right," All Might said. Well, incredible revelations aside, I believe we were talking about my current buff state being damaged by my win from 5 years ago. Izuku responded, oh yeah, right. Was that win from your battle against Toxic Chainsaw? The villain that tried to biologically engineer his chainsaw quirk with his poison type's DNA through illegal experimentation. All Might answered, wow, you know your stuff, but no, it wasn't him. The bastard may have landed a few good hits on me, but he couldn't bring me down. All Might looked to his clenched fist, as if he was remembering something. Most of the world have never heard of this fight. I did everything I could to keep it under wraps. All Might sighed and looked up to the sky. I'm supposed to be the guy who is always smiling, right? All Might said. I'm the symbol of peace. People everywhere have to believe that I'm never afraid. That my smile is meant to bring hope to others despite the dangers. It was a first, but now, honestly, I smiled to hide the fear inside. Izuku was silent once more in shock, his world unraveling in front of him. All Might afraid. Those were words that he thought he would never associate with the fearless symbol of peace. All Might continued with its just a brave face, a mask I put when the pressure's high. This job isn't easy, especially when you don't have any power of your own. Izuku's expression of shock turned to fear and unease. He isn't going to say what I think he is going to say, is he? Izuku thought fearfully. All Might turned to him, a serious and blunt expression on his face. What he said next caused his unraveled world to crumble. Pro heroes are always having to risk their lives. Always putting themselves into the kind of situations that one can't solve without power of their own, lest they put more risk on themselves and their Pokemon. Some villains just can't be beaten without power of their own, to hold their own weight, and to not be a liability to others. So no. I honestly don't believe you can become a hero without a quirk. Izuku gaped in horror and disbelief. In his inner mind, all his memories of All Might, all his dreams of being like him, the crutch that he made All Might into, that supported his dream no matter how much the weight of his dreadful reality was put onto him, were shattered. If Izuku wasn't already on the floor helping Eevee, he would have realistically fallen onto his knees in crushing despair. Izuku looked to ground, his hair in shadows covering his broken eyes. I see. Was all that Izuku managed to say. All Might stood up from his position and said, look, if you want to help people, there are other ways you could do. Izuku's eyes widened, the words familiar in his head, after all he just heard it recently from the boy, who claimed he would surpass the symbol of peace before him. You could become a police officer or detective. They get crap because heroes capture most of the villains and criminals, but it's a fine profession, and it allows for you to use your Pokemon. You could also become Pokemon researcher or professor, hell you could become a great Pokemon doctor, with that Eevee's unique skill. All Might walked towards the door to the side of him. He said, I really need to get going, kid. I'll help to see you taking this lesson to heart and find something realistic to do. Izuku flinched at that last remark. As All Might opened the door, he stopped and spoke again. It's okay to have dreams, young man, just make sure your dreams are obtainable. Realistic, understand. And with that, Izuku heard his steps and the door closed. All Might left. Izuku sat there, his world, his dreams in shambles. Izuku found it hard to breathe. He saw Eevee look at him with worry and concern so similar to that night 10 years ago. He heard sparks of electricity and growling and saw, from the corner of his eye, that Pikachu glared at the wall with such fierce amount of hate and fury, that he only ever saw it when the electric mouse Pokemon looked at Bakugo after a target practice session. Izuku wished he could be angry with All Might too, wished that he would find a justifiable reason to fight back against what people said was the truth, but he couldn't. It was his fault for putting All Might as an emotional crutch to keep his fantasies alive, use his smile as an excuse to never give up, no matter how bad things get. That was his fault. If you rely too much on a crutch, you fall easily when you are without it. If you use an excuse too much, it loses its effect, even to your own ears. And the further you deny the truth to save your dreams, when the truth is proven, the more your dreams die painfully. Izuku felt like he was suffocating by the Sludge villain again, felt the words he has been told throughout his life. Defineless, worthless, useless, little, pathetic, Deku. It was enough to make a guy give up. Enough to take a dive of the roof of a building. The universe itself seemed to be screaming it to him. And wouldn't you know it, they were on a rooftop, how convenient. Before he could move, a loud explosive sound was heard. Izuku and his Pokemon looked towards the noise and saw the large plumes of smoke rising. Izuku rose quickly and said, a villain. I wonder which hero will show. As he ran towards the door, All Might rang in his head again. He stopped in the fuel for his dreams with it. He hung his head in defeat and walked slowly, his eyes opening to reveal no trace of the once bright energy they held, but were now hollow and empty. No meaning left inside. Izuku continued to walk, ignoring the cries of Eevee and Pikachu, as they walked down the stairs and down onto the streets, all thoughts about what he was going to do vanishing, at least not until he could get home and sneak away. Izuku walked down the streets of Nusatafu City, his mind hearing nothing but the words he had been told, now with All Might's rejection added in on a pedestal. A pedestal on the give up on your dreams, you worthless idiot room in his mind. He looked through the notes he made on his notebook, now charred and nearly useless thanks to Koch-chan. As he flipped the page towards where All Might's signature was, his words rang aloud more. Even All Might said it. A hero need a quirk. Izuku said bitterly. He sniffed and wiped his eyes of the tears. Don't cry, damn it. Deep down you knew this. All along. You have just been avoiding reality. That's why you were trying desperately to prove their words wrong. He walked through the streets of the city, not paying attention to any incoming cars, if there were any. Izuku found it funny how no cars had come to hit him after his last defense, and inspiration said no, like the universe was teasing him cruelly. Pikachu and Eevee walked beside him, their faces full of worry, but the two knew that Izuku wouldn't listen to what they would say, or even fully understand what they were saying. It was times like these where the two Pokemon wished Izuku actually did have a quirk that could let him speak to them fully. Izuku found himself in Tatooine shopping district, and where, with a loud explosion, Izuku took notice of a large number of people. His super stopped, the voices momentarily stopping, as he saw the smoke and fire. Izuku realized that he walked towards the source of the explosion. That's strange. Izuku said aloud. Is the battle from earlier still going on? I would have thought the heroes would have taken care of it already. Izuku looked upon the scene with inner bitterness. Why am I here? Izuku thought. Did I subconsciously walk this way to check it out? As if I wanted to find proof against even All Might's rejection. Or maybe I just wanted to see more of what I could never be. As if I didn't need the #1 hero and symbol of peace to flat out tell me. As Izuku walked towards the crowd, trying to look through the large crowd blocking his view of the action. As he managed to find a view to see, Izuku gasped in shock and horror at what he saw. The area was covered in fire and rubble, massive flames all around like a disaster movie. There Izuku saw local heroes like Death Arms, the Punching Hero, Backlash, Kamui Woods, Mount Lady, and other more minor heroes, facing off against a mass of purple and dark green sludge, at the epicenter of the destruction. It was the Sludge villain. It's him. The guy that attacked me earlier. Izuku thought. Izuku saw how Death Arms tried to punch the villain and reach something inside of him, but his fists either slipped through or got himself stuck and knocked away. His Hitmonchan tried as well, but was left with the same results. He saw Kamui Woods and the similarly dressed Sceptile jumping around and rescuing injured civilians to the rooftops, away from the destruction. Izuku thought that Backlash could help, to use his water quirk to douse the villain and destabilize his form, but he and his water Pokemon were busy putting out the fires all over. Izuku peered through the smoke and could see Mount Lady's large visible form, but couldn't squeeze through the narrow space, and her extra large and size-altering gorgeous was at a severe disadvantage, with the copious amounts of fire, and the perhaps poisonous properties of the Sludge villain's quirk. Izuku further thought, but this can't be right. He can't be here. All Might captured him. Izuku gasped and brought his hand over his mouth in horror. The bottles. Izuku's memory altered to reveal that they weren't on All Might's pants pockets. They must have fallen off when Izuku grabbed onto All Might when he was leaving. All because he wanted an answer to his lifelong question so selfishly. So if they dropped, then that must meant that. That means, it's my fault. Izuku whispered, horrified. Izuku heard the voices of the crowd, their voices full of unease and fear. Two in particular, especially the one who answered, caught his attention. Why aren't the heroes doing anything? The man asked fearfully. It looks like they met their match. The guy next to him said. Plus, the villain captured a kid. They can't fight him seriously with him as a hostage. Things are sure not doing well for him. Izuku gasped and looked once again. He caught someone, Izuku thought panically. How can they survive being suffocated like that? I thought I would die in just a few seconds. This can't be happening. Izuku grew more guilty and more horrified at what he had done. He heard more voices coming from the crowd. They asked if that was the same villain All Might faced. They asked where he was. Why he wasn't here. Why he wasn't there to save the day. And, to Izuku, it was because of him. Unbeknownst to Izuku, All Might, still in skinny form, was there, likewise hearing the ever-growing fear in the civilians' voices. Berating himself for wasting his time limit, for letting the villain escape, for causing this disaster. Especially after lecturing the kid. He looked to himself, scoffing and growing frustrated with his own hypocrisy. Izuku looked down in utter despair and shame. I'm the one to blame. He wasted his energy on me. All Might looked down in frustration and shame, clenching his wound in pain, mentally yelling to himself. I'm worthless. Izuku thought he can't power up. And none of the heroes have the right quirks to stop this monster. All Might clenched harder on his wound in pain and frustration. I'm so pathetic. It's my fault. I'm sorry. So sorry. I'm a disgrace. Someone will help out and save the day. I'm sure. I'm not a real hero. Someone, a real hero will come soon. Izuku looked to the Sludge villain again, and looked at the head of familiar spiky ash blonde hair poking out of the villain. He saw the top half of his face, clearly in pain and struggling. Then he opened his eyes, and revealed two crimson red eyes, eyes that were begging for help. Suddenly, everything around Izuku started to fade, his eyes widening in shock and horror. He dropped his notebook, felt the wind push past his face, the feeling of bodies being pushed away. The feeling of his legs, his body, moving without even thinking. All Might, the civilians, and the heroes gasped and gaped in pure shock as Izuku Midoriya ran past them all, heading straight toward the Sludge villain. Death Arms shouted out, "No, you idiot. Stop. You are going to get yourself killed." Izuku didn't listen, his body giving way to his instincts, his mind, body, and soul telling him to run to him, to save him. He didn't care what Katsuki Bakugo did to him for 10 years, the memories and pain being tossed to the side, the words he said to him that cut their ties nearly forgotten. All the words he heard vanished. He only knew one thing at that point: I have to save him. No matter what. The Sludge villain saw Izuku run towards him, saying, "Not this brat again." Katsuki opened his tired eyes, that nearly gave out then and there, and saw the boy that ran towards him. Deku. Izuku, well, he was running towards extremely potential death, looking at Katsuki's eyes and thought, "I don't care what you did to me. I don't care about our past. I don't care about what you are. I just know that I can't do nothing. You're toast, kid." The Sludge villain screamed out. It swung a large tentacled arm towards Izuku. As it came towards him in slow motion, Izuku thought, what should I do, what would a hero do? What can I do? Memories came crashing back to Izuku, his hero knowledge from his journals coming back to him. Izuku dived forwards, jumping up from the swing. As he came crashing to the ground, Izuku remembered his playtimes with Eevee and performed a roll to get him back up quickly. Izuku then used the momentum to toss his backpack, full of notes, books, and papers, onto the Sludge villain's exposed right eye. Dive up to avoid an attack. Izuku recited in his head like a mantra. Combat roll to recover from ground impact quickly. He claimed that his whole body was made of fluids, but what about his solid teeth and eyes? If I can't harm him or overpower, then I will blind him. The Sludge villain screamed in pain as the sharp and hard pieces of paper and books hit his right eye, bringing his right arm back to clutch it and rub it. He looked at Izuku with utter hate and annoyance with his other eye. He raised his left arm high up to slam it down onto him. The villain yelled, "Die. Sudden stop." Then used the momentum to dive sideways to the left to avoid the attack and leave him vulnerable to attack. Izuku thought. He did as he thought, coming to a sudden stop and diving to the left, avoiding the hand. He looked to his side and he saw what he knew would come to help. "Eevee!" Izuku shouted. Eevee jumped into the air, a trail of white behind him as evidence of quick attack. Eevee's tail glowed, but instead of using Slam, Eevee used a new move. Swift. Eevee yelled in power and flipped vertically in the air, launching his tail forward, and yellow star-shaped projectiles fired off onto the Sludge villain's other eye. The Sludge villain howled once more in pain and grasped his other eye. While he was writhing in pain, Izuku landed on the ground where he launched to, his feet in position to launch himself forward. Twist my body in mid-air about 30 degrees right. Land with the soles of my feet to absorb the impact and slide to a stop. At the final stop, place hands in front, like starting a 10-meter dash. Come to complete stop and then launch forward, as fast as I can to Katsuki. Izuku ran towards Bakugo, reaching the trapped explosive teen. Izuku clawed at the sludge around Koch-chan's face, more revealed and exposed. The bully turned to his once childhood friend and shouted, "What the hell? Why are you here, Deku?" Izuku responded quickly, clawing and grabbing Katsuki's body and pulling. Izuku heard the voices but shut them out and did what he had to do. "I don't know. My body started moving. But I don't care. I do know is that I couldn't watch you die and do nothing." Back among the crowd, All Might heard what Izuku said and his eyes widened. How this powerless Quirkless kid rushed in and tried to save the boy, despite the dangers, despite the overwhelming odds, and how his body moved on his own, like, "I have to do something. No matter the cost." Steam rose from his arms and he started to grow. Back with the villain, Izuku pulled and pulled with everything he had. Let go of him. Izuku pulled one last time, with all the strength he got, and Katsuki Bakugo flew out of the Sludge villain. Once he pulled the last of Katsuki out, Izuku shouted out, "Pikachu." Said Pokemon leaped into the air, electricity sparking all around him. Paikaku. The massive blast of thunderbolt launched towards the Sludge villain, the villain screaming in pain, and the massive dose electricity surged throughout his liquid body. Izuku grabbed Katsuki by the wrist and ran, dragging the exploding teen with him, Pikachu and Eevee following them. Bakugo did not like that, reason and logic escaping his mind, the realization that it was Izuku Midoriya, worthless Deku, saving him. Bakugo skid to a stop and shook his hand away from Deku's. Bakugo shrieked to Deku, "Let go of me, you damn worthless nerd. I was fine. You were more idiotic than I thought, rushing in like an idiot there." Izuku would have trembled at Katsuki's vicious rants, but here, he found Bakugo truly unbelievable. Izuku shouted back with panic and irritation, "Come on, you idiot. This is no time to prove something." Katsuki growled and shouted out, ignoring Deku and logic, "I don't need to prove anything to the likes of you. Worthless Deku." Katsuki Bakugo would have possibly struck Deku in pure egotistical rage, had it not been for the recovered Sludge villain. He rushed towards them like a bullet and screamed, "I have had enough of you brats. Both of you. Die." The heroes rushed forwards to save them, Death Arms shouting, "Save the boys. That thing will kill them." As he raised his hands to strike on the frozen teens, a sudden rush of wind followed, and a large burst of rubble and explosion occurred. Izuku, Katsuki, Eevee, and Pikachu were knocked to the ground, coughing and wiping their eyes of the dust and ash. When the dust cleared, they saw that they were alright. They looked up to find that their savior was the two's favorite hero and idol. I really am pathetic. There in front of them, blocking a giant hand of sludge, was All Might. His buff mode of hissing with steam, but he was here, and protected them. All Might. Izuku cried out. All Might looked to Izuku, a large smile on his face, and said, I told you what it takes to make a great hero, but I see now I wasn't living up to my own ideals. In a strong tug of his arm, All Might knocked the villain back. Izuku's eyes stared in awe at All Might's power, and in shock at All Might's words. All Might grabbed Izuku and Katsuki, with his left arm, Pikachu and Eevee holding onto Izuku. As he pulled his arms back, All Might shouted out, blood splattering out of his mouth, and said, pros are always risking their lives. That's the true test of a hero. The sludge villain launched an arm at the symbol of peace, yelling, damn you All Might. Detritus smash. The monstrous burst of wind was blasted out of All Might's powerful punch. The gusts of wind transformed into a massive tornado, blowing the sludge villain to smithereens. As the tornado dissipated, Izuku, Katsuki, the two Pokemon and everyone were left in shock at what happened. The flames from Bakugo's explosions were all put out, the sludge villain's sludge body was blown all over, and All Might stood there with steam rising all over him. As the crowd and heroes gaped in shock at this god-made man, they suddenly felt droplets of water hit their heads. It started to rain and they looked up to see the cause. The clouds swirled around them, a large circle of open air above them where the tornado was created. He changed the weather with a single punch. All Might stood up, and as he raised his fist victory, the crowd cheered wildly. The crowd chanted his name, celebrating his victory. All the while, All Might stared at the boys and Pokemon by his feet, all of them knocked out cold. More specifically, he looked upon Izuku Midoriya. Later, Izuku popped. After that, the heroes and police gathered all the scattered pieces of the sludge villain, and he was taken into police custody, where he belonged. All Might was swarmed by the press, taking pictures and interviewing him. As for me, I got chewed out pretty hard by the heroes, for rushing in and for my Pokemon attacking the villain. But since the sludge villain attacked first, it was viewed as self-defense, so they didn't arrest me. I also was let off the hook for my Pokemon's actions since I never gave them a direct order to attack, and they responded by their own will. So I was free to go. As for Bakugo, he was praised for his courageous actions and for his bravery. I even heard some heroes wishing to take him up as a sidekick should he go pro. Scolded and criticized for saving someone and doing their job, while Bakugo, his explosions caused probably hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars in property damage, helped unknowingly in the endangerment of the lives of innocent bystanders, and endangered his own life by stopping and shouting at someone trying to save him, instead of running away, is praised for his action. I thought. Ironic. I thought sarcastically. All the while I tended to Eevee and Pikachu, who seemed alright, focusing on them mostly. I could sense Katsuki glaring at me, but at that point, I didn't care. I saved him, and he will have to deal with it. Now I'm walking down towards my home, the sun setting and masking my eyes in shadows, Eevee and Pikachu walking alongside me. Despite helping to save Katsuki, I still felt empty, my eyes tired and sad. In the end, I was still saved by All Might, and I didn't fully save Bakugo. I wanted to thank and apologize to All Might, but he was still surrounded by interviewers, so I didn't want to interrupt them. Plus, I wasn't keen on admitting to everyone on TV that I accidentally let the sludge villain loose. I knew it would only cause trouble. I guess I could always send a message through his website. I thought. Deku. I heard a voice call from behind me. I sighed tiredly, and looked towards an approaching and pissed off Katsuki Bakugo. Really? I thought, tired and annoyed. Tried to save his life, probably a few hours ago, and he wants to beat me up now. I turned to Bakugo, panting from running, who said, listen. I would never ask for a weakling like you to help me. Don't think that you can look down on me. You got that. I was fine by myself. You're just a Quirkless failure who wouldn't even cut it as a rent-a-cop. You didn't help me. You did nothing. Don't forget it. He turned away and marched off, yelling out one last time, I don't owe you anything. I stood there, a comical sweat drop on my head, confused as hell. What was that all about? I asked softly. Pick up high. EVV. Pikachu and Eevee said. Pikachu scratched its head with a look of confusion, while Eevee, ears tilted down and eyes closed, just sighed and spoke tiredly, like Eevee just sadly accepted it. I looked to the ground, my eyes still filled with sadness. I thought, insults and exaggeration aside, he is right about one thing. I didn't really save him. All Might still took down the villain. I didn't really help out all too much, but at least I tried. I turned and continued walking. Oh well, time to go back on giving up on my dreams, maybe keep myself alive for a few days, until the urge comes back. I took 2 steps before I am here. I jumped up in shock as All Might appeared suddenly, striking a dramatic pose. All Might, I asked loudly. Why are you here? How did you manage to lose all those reporters? I looked around to see if he was being hunted by an army of bloodthirsty reporters. Ha 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 ha. All Might laughed in amusement. He then said, I stand for justice. not sound bites. Because I am All Might, All Might suddenly debuffed and became skinny again, me screaming in alarm as All Might spat out some more blood. All Might coughed and wiped away the blood of his chin. He then said, "Young man, I came here to thank you, but also to discuss your question from earlier. If you hadn't told me about your life, if you hadn't run into that fight, I would have been a worthless bystander watching from the crowd. So, thanks." I blushed in embarrassment and stuttered out, "No. It was my fault that the villain was there to begin with. I got in the way of your hard work. Wasted your energy and your time." I looked down depressingly. "I'm not done." All Might interrupted. "You told me you didn't have a power. So when I saw this timid Quirkless boy try to save a life, it inspired me to act too." My eyes widened in shock, my brain refusing to accept the words that he said. All Might, inspired by me. And nobody. I looked onto the symbol of peace as he continued. "There are stories about every hero, how they became great. Most have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they had a chance to think. Almost on their own." I gasped softly in shock. My eyes began to water, my lip quivered, and I whimpered as I looked upon the ground. For some reason, I remembered my mother's words. "I'm sorry, Izuku. I wish things were different." I gripped my heart, almost painfully. Years of torment, both physical and mental. Years of my dreams trampled and stomped on, as they came bubbling up. I sobbed, my eyes brimming with tears. I bent down, the weight of the pain in my heart too much to bear. All Might continued, "And today, that's what happened to you." I fell to my knees, my eyes closed as the tears ran loose. Eevee and Pikachu comforted me, their eyes brimming with tears themselves, which made me sob more. I trembled, whimpered and sobbed through gritting teeth, the emotional weight that I've carried for 10 years, the pain of losing my friend, the words, the ridicule. Everything came out, as my idol praised me and was saying what I always wanted to hear. "You never told me, Mom." Back then, the thing I wanted you to hear, the thing that no one but Eevee and Pikachu believed, the thing I wanted you to say, the words I needed to hear. The breeze flew by, the petals flying past us. All Might looked upon me with glowing blue eyes, pure conviction and truth in his voice. "Young man, you too can become a hero." I let the pain out. I let the tears flow like a raging river, like cries and wails free. My wish came true. I have told him who I am, what I am, and despite all of it, still told me yes. I was told yes. By my greatest hero. By the hero I looked up to. To the hero who just saved my life. Dreams can become reality. Oh. By the way, I forgot to mention that this is the story of how I became the world's greatest hero. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.